That's in recognition of this young man. He's still young. Because he generously comes to all of our meetings in spite of the fact that he's a Democrat. We are friends anyway.
We love you, Fred.
And we are friends. He keeps telling me that. I hope I believe him. So that's Fred Hadley. The Village Century is his baby. Some people have babies in different ways, you know. But he has a beautiful newsletter that we look forward to reading, especially since we're in it all the time. I'm so excited about that, you know. In any event, thank you, Fred.
You're welcome.
And I have to acknowledge Melissa for keeping you straight.
You're misinformed.
No, I'm not. I know that lady. In any event, welcome to Friends of Liberty Republican Club. I'm a little bit zonked over Passover. If any of you know what that means, I left my apartment looking as if it was a storage facility. In any event, I want to call upon Shmuel, who's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and then the invocation. Shmuel Schuster is our vice president.
In charge of water.
Okay.
Everybody,
Please rise.
Rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all. All right, just
Please
stand.
remain standing.
Let's stand for another couple of seconds. Okay, now we're going to do the blessing. May God bless you and safeguard you. May he illuminate his countenance upon you and be gracious to you. May he watch over you and establish peace for you. Amen. Also, may we have a peaceful April for all of the different religions.
Yes, amen. Yep. Passover, Easter coincide this year. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to call on Anna, who will introduce our featured speaker. Brian, please come up.
Brian Stemberg. He is our South County Regional REC Director, and he meets once a month at the South County Civic Center. The
Third Tuesday of the month.
third Tuesday of every month.
Do you want to sit?
No, I'll stand.
You're going to stand?
Yeah.
Is that high enough for you?
I'm just going to throw my notes on here so that I can refer to something.
Okay, but I'm saying there's one that's higher.
Oh, no, this is fine.
Okay.
It's actually better because
Thank
it's
you for
farther away. I
making
can
me
see it
feel
better.
He has to stand, otherwise we couldn't see him.
That's right, exactly. I want to thank you, Hilda, and the Friends of Liberty Club for inviting me to speak tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's wonderful to be in front of a bunch of patriots who are very interested in the political scene all over the country and certainly in your own backyard. I have a lot to say tonight. I'm assuming that this is going to take me about 150 minutes to get through, so if you need to take a bathroom break, now's the time to do it. But no, seriously, I'm not going to take 150 minutes. I'm going to take the allotted amount of time. So one thing I don't do is I don't watch CNN. I don't watch Fox News. I don't watch any television news. For one reason or the other, and I heard Elisa mentioned to me that the news is owned by the people who advertise on it, and so I don't want to be part of that. So what I do a lot of is every morning I get up, I read the Bible, I do a Wordle, I read a local newspaper that I stopped getting the hard copy of a long time ago because I was tired of paying for it, and I ran out of birds to put it in. And then I read the Wall Street Journal. I check out social media, and I I don't really get too much into it, but I do listen to a lot of podcasts, and I've learned a lot from doing those things and really staying out of what you would call the mainstream media environment. And I think it really helps to keep me from ending up going nutty and getting really depressed about the world. Because I have to tell you, there's a lot of wonderful things going on. There's a lot of scary things going on. It's like we live in a roller coaster, and you know we do kind of live on a roller coaster, but that's where we're at. I wanted to start by saying today that we have a president in Donald Trump, and we have an administration in the Trump administration that has done more in the last, what is it? It's the end of March right now, a month and a half, 60 days or so, than I've seen in my lifetime of any president doing. And it's really remarkable. And I want to remind you about something. There was a campaign slogan that the Trump administration your Trump campaign was using. What was it? What is it? It's for
Make America Great Again.
Make America Great Again. I wanted to reiterate something real quick. All right. The word make is a verb, right? It's a strong verb. To make, to do, to actually do something, to do it. It doesn't mean to sit back and let it happen. It doesn't mean to ignore it. It means it's an active verb where we're actually doing what we're saying we're going to do. America. What was that pledge that we did at the beginning? The Pledge of Allegiance. Republic, one nation under God. All right. So we're actively making our republic, one nation under God, great. The way I defined great was a rising tide floats all the boats. Right. Again. I heard it, it's funny because I heard it on a podcast as I was headed over here today. And again means back to basics. It doesn't mean 1950. It doesn't mean 1899. It doesn't mean 1776. It means back to basics. Common sense. It means back to our founding principles. It means that we are headed in that direction. That's what Make America Great Again was all about. And it really irks me when I hear somebody say MAGA this and MAGA that in a derogatory term. And it's actually really ironic that people use that term in a derogatory way, because it's nothing but positive. Because again, a rising tide lifts all boats. And that's what MAGA is all about. So, there are so many things going on, as I mentioned before, with the Trump administration and with the guy who won the popular vote. We talked about the popular vote. It wasn't necessarily a popularity contest. Popular meaning more people voted for that guy than the woman, and that's great. And for some people, it was a popularity contest. For some people, they saw that there was a candidate that you know what, I agree with a lot of what he's got to say. And I think that he's going to do right by us. And that's what he's doing. And you know what? Any politician has a platform. Right? They have different steps to their platform, things they're going to do. They say they're going to do when they are running. And in the Trump situation, there's 20 of them. Right? So, number one was to seal the border and stop the migrant invasion. Let me ask you, hands up, has it happened?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it happening? Yes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Does everybody like it?
Yes.
No.
I know I do. Some people don't, right? But they don't necessarily have to. They may not be the people who dealt directly with an illegal immigrant who's come to this country and is taking advantage of things, is committing crimes, and is not being a productive member of society. Didn't get any vetting, just slipped in, right? How many of our ancestors just slipped in this country, right? Our ancestors came to this country and we assimilated, and we learned the language, and we worked, and we helped to build up what we have today. And so Trump says, okay, we're going to make America great again, and one way we're going to do it is we're going to make sure that the people who are coming into this country absolutely are going to contribute to the common good of our country. So that was number one. Number two, carry out the largest deportation operation in American history. Every president has deported illegal aliens. And President Trump has, he had a pretty high number as a goal. Who knows if he's going to reach that number, but I think the saying that I'm going to get rid of a million illegal immigrants and send them back to their homes so they can sort of think this through a little bit more, that sends a message. Because what it sends a message to is the people who are here illegally who figure, well, I'm probably going to get caught, so I might as well self-deport. I think that's the overriding message that you see. And you may never know who actually leaves the country and who self-deports. But my guess is that it's going to turn out to be a much better situation just by people voluntarily leaving, because they're able to do it, and they don't want to deal with ending up in a jail in El Salvador or some other place that's not all that desirable. Let's see, we have the end inflation and make America affordable again. I don't know if you've noticed recently, but the inflation rate has gone down a bit. The inflation reporting trails by about a month or so every month, and the affordability part is a really interesting situation, because one of the things we hear about a lot here in Palm Beach County is the affordability of housing. And if you're on a fixed income, or if you have a growing family and you're trying to live somewhere, and you got to have a mortgage, and you have to pay insurance, and you got to pay for food, and on and on and on and on, and your salary isn't necessarily keeping pace with inflation, then you're not doing so great, right? And so one of the things that we hear about with the DOGE effort, for example, is for the federal government to go in and to look at the different departments and to cut the waste wherever they can. And everybody gets so crazy when the Department of Education is being sliced up and diced up. Well, you know what? You're going to hear on CNN that it's the worst thing, that local children are going to lose out. The disabled kids aren't going to be able to walk anymore, and you know, the kids who need Braille, they're going to take the books away from them, and all that. But that's not the case. I can tell you that I've kind of watched Donald Trump as a father and a grandfather, not my father or grandfather, oh well, for many years, and the guy is caring, he's compassionate, he's not gonna do that to anybody, right? Anything that is really critical is going to be carried by a different department. So, for example, services for disabled kids, for example, that would go to Department of Health and Human Services. Now, if you have a bloated bunch of middle management within the Department of Education, a lot of those people are going to be shown the door because they're not doing anything. There were a lot of folks in the federal government who weren't even showing up to work, which not too long ago you heard about the email that the government sent out to thousands of employees and said, tell us what you did. Tell us 5 things you did last week. A bunch of people didn't respond to the email, so they were out because they probably weren't working anyway. They were on vacation. They're down here in Florida on the beach, most likely. Number 4, make America the dominant energy producer in the world by far. You remember all the effort of paying for solar energy, and which I love solar energy. I think it's great. I'm not too crazy about wind energy. I acknowledge the fact that the world's society is based on the use of natural gas and oil and coal and things like that, which, as far as I can tell, we've been improving the technology of those things so that we can get more energy out of them and use them in a cleaner way. And it was unreasonable to think that our world would be able to just go cold turkey on oil and fossil fuels, just call it fossil fuels. There's no way we can go cold turkey on that stuff and expect that a lot of people are going to survive. The idea in my mind of having a society and having people is that we stay alive, and we've figured out good ways to do that. And one of them is to have energy that we can use to cook our food so that we don't get sick from whatever bugs are in the food, that we can keep ourselves cool in the summer and warm in the winter. It just helps to stay alive. So then you have number 5, stop outsourcing and turn the United States into a manufacturing superpower. Well, can you say the word tariff? Yes, you can say the word tariff. And what are some of the immediate things that we've seen that the tariffs have pushed other countries to do? And I'll give you an example. Yeah, so Hyundai, the car manufacturer, they were in a meeting with Trump the other day, and they're talking about how they're investing $20 billion or whatever into new factories, into a steel plant, in the South, a new car factory in Georgia, a steel plant here. There's other companies that are coming in and investing billions of dollars because it's cheaper for them to invest in this country than to build something overseas and then to ship it in just because of the tariffs. So all of a sudden, because of the tariffs, you have companies coming over and hiring American workers and using American resources and selling their stuff to Americans so that they can save the money that they would otherwise have to spend on tariffs. This is a good thing. And yes, we're told, oh, it's going to cost us all a lot more money because when we do have imports, it's going to be passed on to us. That might be the case. And you know what? Trump was very transparent about that. And he said, yeah, it might be a little tricky for a little while, but stick with me on this and it'll be all right. And I believe that because I do think, no pain, no gain. And if you have to be patient though, and you can't look at just what's in front of you with what's on the media and how this is the worst thing since sliced bread. This is the worst thing, the best thing since sliced. No, they would just don't mix your metaphors up too much. That's the main thing I would advise. But it's really important to remember that that the news media that you're watching right now is, again, they're bought and paid for by certain industries that want you to think and act in a certain way. Mostly act in a certain way, and that would be your buying decisions, because it all comes down to money at the end of the day anyway. And so so just keep that in mind. When you're watching this stuff, take it with a grain of salt. I mean, that's my best advice to anybody. Large tax cuts for workers and no tax on tips. Do you remember before the election when you go out to dinner and you're always tempted to say, when you're tipping your waiter and you say, no tax on tips. Some people did that, and people were like, oh, there's no way that's ever going to happen. Well, guess what? It's something that Trump is pursuing, and who knows what's going to happen with it. But if you run a government that spends less money, then the concept is that you should have to raise less money in taxes. So let's hope that it continues to work that way, because I pay taxes and we all pay taxes in one form or another, and whether you work or not, you're still paying taxes. And so again, that's good. And that's the other thing, people fail to acknowledge that the largest share of taxes is paid by the wealthiest group of people already. There's already a lot of people who are very wealthy who are paying a significant amount of tax. And even if they have all kinds of loopholes for getting out of paying the tax, they're still paying a lot of tax compared to what everybody else is. And sure, it'll benefit them, but I think it actually benefit everybody at some point. 7, defend our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to keep and bear arms. You know, we see all this we saw the worst of it actually, since the entire time that Trump has been involved in politics, since 2015, 2014, where the United States government used lawfare against him to shut his whole thing down. Now, I don't see what he's doing as vengeance for that. I see it as reconciliation and correction of it so that it doesn't happen to anybody else again. And that goes for, not just for freedom of speech, but for freedom of religion as well. I mean, if you have watched what during COVID, for example, when the government would come into certain areas and people would be worshiping in a room like this and they'd shut it down, right? How can you possibly imagine doing that? And how could we allow it? How could we allow it to happen, number one? And how will we make sure that it never happens again? I think a big way to do that is to do what Trump is doing, and that is to clean the government out of the waste and the bloat and the garbage that we don't need, and making sure that people are aware again of what our Constitution calls for. It's basic civics, right? And I think everybody in this room took civics class when they were in 7th grade, and you still follow it very closely, and you understand very well what it is how our Constitution runs. All right, I'm on number 9. I told you I have a lot of stuff on my paper here because there's so much. Prevent World War III. Where was that? Hang on a second. Prevent World War III. Oh, that was number 8. Restore peace in Europe and in the Middle East, and build a great Iron Dome missile defense shield over our entire country, all made in America. Wow. For the sake of my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, I only have children right now, no grandchildren, no great-grandchildren yet, but for their sake, I don't want World War III. Because we know what happens with the World War, and we know that it impacts generation after generation. And it's a horrible thing, and nobody wants World War III. I am so pleased to see things like us going and clearing out the Houthis so that ships can pass in the Red Sea. I am so happy to see that Trump is trying to mediate a deal in Ukraine. I'm so happy to see, hopefully, another Abraham Accords. Because at the end of the day, nobody wants to live in a regime of war. And I think it's really amazing. I'm sure a lot of you probably read The Art of the Deal that Trump issued many, many years ago. And the guy's a deal maker. And his deal making is in the interest of America first, right? America first doesn't mean everybody else last. America first, again, means it goes along with Make America Great Again. A rising tide lifts all boats. And that's really what it boils down to. And that's what, in my opinion, that's what Donald Trump and the Trump administration is working to do, is to make those good things happen and to bring peace. And I remember in the Reagan days we talked about peace through strength, right? This is another example of peace through strength. You show what you can do, and you show, or at least you give some indication that you're crazy enough to make it happen. And all of a sudden people start to step into line, and they call you up and they say, hey, we really would like to talk about this a little bit more, because we don't want you to shut down our economy. We don't want you to bomb our cities. We want to work together. We don't necessarily want to be friends, but we want to work together. And I think that goes a long way for us. Number 9, end the weaponization of government against the American people. I really think that goes back to the Defend Our Constitution and Bill of Rights. So those two are pretty related. But that story is something I hope we never forget about the things that happen in this country where the government was weaponized against individuals and groups. It should never happen again. Number 10, stop the migrant crime epidemic, demolish the foreign drug cartels, crush gang violence, and lock up violent offenders. I see a lot of that happening. I was in Mexico a few weeks ago, and I have to tell you that I didn't notice any cartel. I didn't notice any cartel members running around. I actually felt that Mexico City, in the area we were at, was pretty safe. It was nice, very leafy, and lots of trees and great food. Everybody was about this tall, so I stood out like a sore thumb. Hilda, you would have fit right in, except for you're not tan enough.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, you know, if you fail to enforce the law, you're going to get more of what you're failing to stop. Right? And our administration knows that, and even here in Florida, the DeSantis administration knows that. A lot of our local governments know that. Not all of them, because some are a little loosey-goosey when it comes to enforcing the law. But to have that emphasis on stopping crime that way, come from the very top, is such a great signal to everybody, to every one of us on the ground, to know that, you know, we're part of that too, right? Because we don't want to be victims, and we don't want to put ourselves in a position of being a victim. But it's really easy to become a victim these days, and so I'm very relieved to know that our government is looking to try to make that a better situation for us and with us, and the drug cartel thing is really crazy. I mean, we've had. I saw a cartoon about the war on drugs and Drugs One. I guess we need to take a different approach to that. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but certainly shutting down the flow of drugs and shutting down the constituent parts of drugs that come into this country is a good start. I think we have a huge moral problem in this country, that, you know, where you have a lot of people who are addicted. You know, they're major consumers of drugs, and if you have consumers of drugs, you're going to have suppliers of drugs. And so we have a crisis in this country of hopelessness and despair and all that stuff, which I think the solution to that is when we go back to one nation under God. We recognize that, you know, that we are one nation under God, and we're, as a nation under God, we are brothers and sisters, and that we got to work with each other to help each other and that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody goes on welfare with the government, because it doesn't mean that. It does mean that there has to be much more emphasis on loving your neighbor as yourself, as we were commanded. Rebuild our cities. This is number 11. Rebuild our cities, including Washington, D.C., making them safe, clean, and beautiful again. Can you imagine going to your nation's capital and seeing a bunch of vagrants that are sleeping underneath bridges, and to see graffiti on the Congress, on the walls of the Congress, and seeing just decline? What does that tell the rest of the world when you allow the beauty of your nation's capital to be defamed by things like that? And I think Trump really recognizes that. I mean, when you look at the properties that he's developed over the years, they're beautiful. You know, Mar-a-Lago's gorgeous. Trump Tower, it's all shiny. He understands the value of putting your best foot forward and helping people to understand that they're dealing with something special. When you go to Washington, D.C., you should be able to get on the metro. The escalators should work. The trains should be clean. You know, it should be, the capital really should be that shining city on a hill, because people should be able to look to it and to walk around it and to understand it. And I really appreciate that, because I love to go to Washington, D.C. I think it's a really fascinating place. But over the years, as I've gone there many times, it always seems like it's looking a little more long in the tooth. And we need to, I think it's important to make sure that it's not so long in the tooth. And I agree with him. And I think that he's already, I think he's talked about federalizing Washington, D.C. A lot of the people who live there aren't crazy about it because they all voted for Kamala Harris. But he's also talked to the mayor, and he and the mayor have had conversations, and they've been friendly conversations. And so, again, he's working to make a deal. It's not for his sake, it's for the sake of the country, and for the people who live in Washington, D.C. too. 12, we're almost there. Strengthen and modernize our military, making it, without question, the strongest and most powerful in the world. Because when you present yourself with force to the rest of the world says, oh, okay, yeah, we'll step in line. Which doesn't mean that we're trying to dominate the world. It means that we're trying to make sure, we understand common sense, and we want to share that with the world, and we understand the value of America. And a lot of other people, a lot of Western nations understand the value of America. There's some that don't, and they got to step in the line. So, I think I think there's a new jet that was introduced. It was the F-47. Imagine that, 47. Huh? Where that came from?
Same number as the Trump presidency.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. Maybe he could have had a 45 and a 47. Who knows? Number 13, keep the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. Now that's really interesting. You can use the U.S. dollar in a lot of different countries. Canada may not be too crazy about taking the dollar these days, although the dollar is worth a lot more than the Canadian dollar. Our currency has been the reserve currency for many years, and there's other, you have cryptocurrency, which I have no idea what cryptocurrency even is, but and because I don't know what it is, I think it's much better to have the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. But this is something, strengthening the dollar and making it work is something that the Trump administration is definitely doing. I think that we've got a very talented Treasury Secretary. I think we've got I'm confident that our federal government is doing a much better job at trying to figure out how to keep it strong and how to make it strong. And and again, this crypto thing, I don't know. But if crypto is something, I think Trump has enough people in his department who are going to understand exactly how it works, and it'll work. 14. This is a big one, and this is really funny because you hear the opposite on the news media all the time. You already know what I'm going to say. Yeah, which one do you think it is? What do you think it is?
He's a threat to democracy.
No, he's not a threat to democracy. I'm here to tell you that.
Well, I know. But
Okay,
that's
good.
what it
Okay, fight for and protect Social Security and Medicare
yeah.
with no cuts, including no changes to the retirement age.
Right.
That's what I figured that might be a big one in this room, right? I would think. I've been hearing for years that Social Security is going to be out of business by the time I retire. And that day is coming closer every day. And, Trump, it's been great because Trump has always made the promise that Social Security and Medicare are safe under his administration. And you know what? We'll get back to the Make America Great Again thing. And then we have all these initialized things, DOGE, right? The Department of Government Efficiency. I can't even fathom how much fraud and waste there are in the Social Security and Medicare industries. Just here in South Florida's a hotbed for Medicare fraud. You go to Dade County, and there's all kinds of crazy clinics set up, and so on. All these people that are stealing from Medicare, and sometimes they get caught, and sometimes they don't. But there's just so much fraud and so much waste, and it's really pretty scary, actually. And when you go back to the talk about recognizing our Constitution, making sure that departments are doing what they're supposed to do, making sure that there's not extra duplication because you have 8 bureaucrats who are hanging around with the same title and doing the same thing and being paid an exorbitant amount of money to do it. When you get that stuff out, it makes the promise of protecting Social Security and Medicare much more palatable and realistic. So again, I happen to believe that what the Trump administration is doing as far as this particular plank on the platform, it's the truth. And of course you're going to hear the opposite, because anything that anybody says that is a positive, somebody's in the media is going to find some negative spin on it. But every now and then, I even heard Bernie Sanders say the other day, Trump has a pretty good idea there. So, I don't know that it's going to convert Bernie Sanders over into a Republican, or I'm pretty sure it's not. But the point is that there are some ideas that are floating around right now. Okay, one more, I'm told. I'm almost there. But I only have 20 more to go.
Next time.
Okay, so electric vehicle mandate, we're out of that. Funding for school pushing critical race theory. Oh boy. So Department of Education, again, I went over that before, but critical race theory is an indoctrination technique that the Department of Education was pushing. When the Department of Education sends money to the local level, it says, now what are you going to do for us in return? And what a school district or a state would do in return for that money is to say, okay, we'll teach critical race theory. We'll teach things that are indoctrinating people. And that's the exchange. We're getting rid of that, right? The states are going to be in charge of education. Keep men out of women's sports. Yes. You know what? I'm not much of an athlete, but I have to tell you that if my daughters were playing volleyball, for example, and they get mixed up with a boy who says he's a girl, just so that he can be this tall and smack the ball on her head, that's just unfair. We have laws in this country that we put together to make sure that women could have sports, and that they could be exclusive to them, that they wouldn't have men that they would have to compete with. So I think that's happening. It's really exciting to happen. Deport pro-Hamas radicals. I think we're seeing that. Make our college campuses safe and patriotic again. Columbia University is now, they are under the gun now, because the Trump administration says, okay, well, we're going to take away $400 million of government money, and you're going to be out in the cold. And like, oh yeah, we want to talk now. We want to talk now. Because y'all know what happened there. It was, there were anti-Semitic protests. There's just so much going on there that was just out of control, and now it's getting back into control. Secure our elections, including same-day voter identification, paper ballots, and proof of citizenship. I think a lot of that we see at the state level. Florida's working on a law right now, and I think there's a little controversy about it, and I need to read up a bit myself. But and not every avenue that we're looking at right now is perfect, but you got to ask, how did we end up with just unlimited paper ballots, or unlimited mail-in ballots? How did we end up with voting for 2-3 weeks before an election? Again, back to basics. I think we can get back to basics, and that's what Trump is pushing a lot of the stuff down to the states, partially by getting rid of a lot of federal bureaucracy. That stuff's not benefiting anybody. And the 20th plank was unite our country by bringing it to new and record levels of success. A rising tide lifts all boats. Let me tell you, I am super enthusiastic about our Trump administration. I think that he's done an amazing job of not anointing his successor. And the people that are working on his cabinet are all very capable people who could all serve most of them could serve as a president. I think you're gonna see them over the next few years trying to prove themselves, and I think it'll be to our benefit overall. And I'm really excited about it. I hope you pray for our president. I do every day. And I hope you pray for all elected officials.
Oh, we're going to pray for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Isn't that wonderful? And we're going to try and
Have this at all of our meetings to keep track, to have a sense of accomplishment, where it's going, and that it's going well. Because so far, John, it's going really well. And welcome. Yes, we're in a little bit of a roller coaster now, not knowing at this moment that the prices have really flattened. They haven't yet. But time will tell us that we're in the right direction, and that's what we all are hoping. And we have to be a little patient. The Hebrew word for that is sablanut. You have to have some patience and allow what is happening to happen. So I'm thanking you very much. Will you come back
Of
and
course I
give
will.
some further details, and then also to hear about what we're doing from an election point of view, because you're really very involved in that right now. And how did we do in the locals? Do we know yet? Today was an election. Not here.
In Boynton Beach, right? In the Boynton Beach.
Yeah, today there was a runoff election in Boynton Beach and Jupiter. For the municipal elections that happened a couple weeks ago, where there were Republicans who were incumbent and running for re-election, a lot of them remained in their seats. Some Republicans who came in as opponents didn't do so great. But it takes, John can tell you that it takes a lot of work to put your name on the ballot. You don't always win. I can tell you from experience, you don't always win. You learn a lot about your community, and I will say, one of the things on the agenda tonight was how can you help, right? There's a lot of great ways you can help out a candidate, and the first thing you can do to help out a candidate is to get to know him, and to understand whether that's a person you really would like to support. Because once you get to know a candidate and something that he or she says to you resonates with you, makes it a lot easier for you to go and maybe knock on doors or send a text message or write a letter to a friend or however you want to communicate with somebody. And every single contact that one of us has with a voter on behalf of a candidate makes a difference. Because in the county, John ran for District 5 in Palm Beach County. Even a race like that could come down to a handful of votes of winning or losing. And so you're going to have a lot of opportunities going forward to help out if you wish to help somebody out. It's not just about the money. Money helps out a lot, but the human contact between us as neighbors is so important. Hilda can tell you that, and Hilda's actually the mistress of election mayhem.
I'm glad
She
he
knows
finished that
how to
sentence.
be a helper.
Brian is now the director of South Region, and he's on top of all of these opportunities for candidates and keeping us abreast. I happen to be a state committee woman, so is Anna, so is Brian, and we're involved in working with elections. This particular day was not in our community, but we have a big one coming next year. 2026 is very big. We have congressional races that are going to be happening. We have governor happening. So there are a lot of things happening that we need all of us to be helping with. And walking with John, it was a gift for me to help him meet all of the people in my community. And Joy did it, and it really, those are things that we are involved in. Because the question I had been asked is, what are we involved in? And that is something we are involved in directly. We have captains in buildings. We try to spread the word about those candidates we're supporting and helping. And we choose, and we get to know the candidates we are helping. And that is the way to succeed. What we are aiming to do, Fred, is to elect Republicans to the House. from Palm Beach County. That's what we're going to aim to do. And any of the other activities that involve candidates. We don't know yet who is running for various things, although Joe Kaufman, who ran in the last election, is running again for the congressional seat in Palm Beach County. So we do a lot, and that gives me an opportunity to tell you something. Next month, we're going to have an organization meeting. What will that be? It will be asking you to identify an activity that you want to help out with. It's wonderful that I feel committed to being involved the way I am. I don't know any other way. But it's not a woman, clearly. It's not a one-woman show. It is really all of our responsibility and all of our effort. We have wonderful people here, and if I start identifying them, you're going to yell at me, because I know I'm going to forget someone. And Passover, which is around the corner for me, it has muddled my brain with all the things we have to do. But in any event, so the next meeting is April 29th, it's Tuesday, and put it on your schedule, please, because we're going to organize volunteers, activities that we all have to do. We need somebody who's a computer maven, because Anna has been handling it. We need to spread the activity wealth with everyone. So I want to thank you. That was really, really well done. Don't you agree? And maybe next time, Brian comes to all of our meetings if he can. And then he has, you want to tell them about your meetings? Because
Sure.
they can come as guests.
Yes. As Hilda mentioned, I am the director of the South Region of the Republican Executive Committee. We meet every month on the third Tuesday. I'm going to send Hilda our schedule, just so you can, if you want to get it from her, she can get it for you. We're over at the South County Civic Center on Jog Road. We start our meetings at 7 p.m. and I try to be cognizant of time and get them done before midnight. No, actually, I try to get them done in less than an hour and a half, and we're usually pretty good about that. But what we do there, we do a variety of things. One thing I like to do is actually Hilda's suggestion, and that is to help people understand how to do basic stuff having to do with campaigning. So, for example, not too long ago, we did role playing, where I had a couple people, somebody was a voter and somebody was a candidate, and another person was a volunteer for a candidate, and they knocked on the door and they had a conversation. And we had a little bit of a critique about how they did it, and it was positive feedback that everybody got. And it was really helpful. You know, another time we're going to talk about, communicating with people by letter. I mean, I used to write letters when I was a kid, but now I write, emails and I shoot texts to people and stuff like that. But again, it comes down to the way that politics works best is grassroots and on the ground. Again, John is he's a veritable encyclopedia of how to campaign, just because he's been doing it for so long, and he was on the ground with so many people. And sticks with it too. He didn't just give up when that election was over. He's still at it, and he's got that flag to prove it. Flag shirt, I should say. Anyway, so you all are invited to the meeting. I'll send the schedule to Hilda.
Thank you. Now I did say, and it is almost time for us to end. I did say that I talk a little bit about my experience in Israel. I was in Israel for 2.5 weeks. We've been going through, I don't want to use the word hell, but I'm going to do it anyway, and difficult and terrible times. You wouldn't know it when you're in Israel. they have such an extraordinary strength, iron, as they walk, as these young soldiers, women and men, women and young men, women and young women, with their rifles, wherever they are. In fact, I attended a wedding of my niece and nephew, not my niece, sorry. My niece and her betrothed. He is now my nephew, right? And her name is Batya Jacobs, and his name is Eli Yudin. And it was a magnificent wedding. I was warned that it might, I would be attending an Israeli wedding, so there'll be only 3 tables available. My seat and my sister-in-law's would be reserved. And not to worry, you'll have a seat at the table, not to worry. It was an American wedding. There was not only tables, there was an enormous amount of food, such that I thought that the appetizer was the main meal. So you say, wait, but it wasn't. It was the appetizing was the beginning. So in any event, it was a wonderful experience. And then, of course, it was also a time, a very, very sad time when the whole country was mourning. And why? Because I was able to watch, I couldn't go myself, to watch the horrific, it's very hard for me to talk about it, because as I was watching it on TV, because I couldn't go where the bodies were being brought of the 2 babies, the Bibas babies, and a larger coffin that was also sent. And they were having, when it was done, the Hamas and their loyalists were celebrating, making these, there were some during that time who were hostages and released, and in each case it was horrific. The funeral cortege after the government determined that in fact the woman was not Mama Bibas. It was a Gazan woman that they had put in the coffin. They thought it was a joke. That's what some of them have said. You know, we did it just to see, you know, as if it wouldn't be checked. And so they had to wait to bury the babies. And the funeral cortege was enormous. I was watching this, my granddaughter and her school participated. The school, they just lined the ways. The burial itself was private. And the babies finally got to be with their mom. They were buried together. And the country was in mourning. You could feel the difference. They were in mourning. As I watched this, I just, you know, there were flowers and the pictures of the babies and the mom and some videos of the that we all saw as they were being captured, and the pain in her face, not knowing what was going to happen. The husband was released, and they kept saying that Israel bombed them, but they did an autopsy, and the babies were choked and bruised, and I don't want to go on. It was a horrific time, and yes, I said to you, in the Jewish tradition, when a couple is married, there are 7 days of celebration. It eases them into the role. And so at one of those, I was present because there's 7 different groups, nights. My nephew's son was allowed by his commander to leave. He was in his uniform, and slung on his shoulder was his rifle. But he had to be there because this was his sister, and he had to be there. So it was difficult, and at the same time, the Israeli people are, I can only say, they have the strength of lions. But men, women, and children. And last week I had a program here from the World Zionist Organization, and a young man who his name was Menachem Mendel Levy. He was a soldier, described what happened with his group. He was, it must have been an IUD of some sort, or no, I think it was a rocket aimed at them.
Yeah, it was a rocket aimed at his friend and killed his friend.
His friend. The friend died, everybody else was wounded. He survived 3 surgeries, and the videos we saw of what that meant was unbelievable. And then there was this woman who was a mother of 4 children, I think it was 5, but it doesn't matter at that point. Her husband was in reserves, and she figured out a way, it took her a while, to be able to manage this. To be able to manage being a wife, a mother of 4 children, and every time she spoke about something that she was doing, and she says, and then I diapered the baby. And each time it was, and then I diapered the baby. She was marvelous, and decided to share that with other women like her, who were also waiting for their husbands to return. And you know, and I know, that some of them never did. And it's heartbreaking every time we hear of even one. But victory is going to be very sweet. I'm telling you that now, and it's the only way. It's the only way. At this point, we know they're back in conflict, with Hamas not willing to accept whatever the deals were that were being engineered by Qatar and other Arab pro-Hamas folks, and they refused. What was it that they refused? They refused to accept a ceasefire, and the deal was to release everybody. And we know that everybody wasn't everybody. It was some bodies. At least 24 they know may still be alive. It's hard to say, but they have a good intelligence operation in Israel, so they know that many of them are not alive anymore. But for us, burying a child, burying a father, that's very, very important to us. So it's 2.5 weeks. I was on that roller coaster, and I hope to go back and to volunteer. I'm hoping maybe during the summer I will volunteer to help. It's just pulling me to it. And so I'm going to ask Elaine. You need a microphone, Elaine? No. Elaine is the secretary. You need a mic? No, he's taping.
Everyone will hear me.
You asked for results of the elections. Both of our people won.
Oh, good deal. John, you're always on top of things. Good deal. Come, you need the mic.
Yes, give him the mic. I want
No, but I
more
just want to
detail.
congratulate John on the fact that there's John Fisher Day.
John Fisher Day. Well, for me it's every day, but who am I?
Congratulations. Okay. To be informed, we need your email, and please save the date. Our next meeting is an organization meeting. If you're interested in becoming active, we have a job for you Tuesday, April 29th. and thank you all for coming. And I think on the way out, we can take your email addresses and other information.
As I said to you earlier, we must have your sign-in. And it would be helpful if you also put your email in such a way that I can read it. And so I'd appreciate that. For safety's sake, we have to have you sign in. You just never know what can happen. Yes? When is it? March 11th. Well, she just congratulated him for that. March 11th was your John Fisher Day.
Yes, yes.
And as I said, that's not enough for me. Every day, John Fisher Day for me.
You said in the email that you were going to talk about who to vote for the Zionist Organization of America. I keep seeing on Facebook.
This is for anyone who wants to stay and is interested in voting for the World Zionist Organization. There are 22 slates. I know what to do. You need a phone and a credit card. So if you want to stay and do that with me, I'm happy to do that. I'm trying to arrange another time for that to happen. And I will get a notice out to you. Maybe this is a little too late for some of you. If it's not, let me know. Because I'm not going anywhere until we put everything away. So thank you very much. Don't forget to join, please. It's only $20. It helps us a lot. And $5 for as a donation, because you could see we have a beautiful spread over there, and it takes money. So help us out with your donation, and instead of a donation, join. It's $20 for the year. All right, thank you for coming, all of you. Thank you, Brian. Fantastic, really. You know, we were thinking about doing that every month, checking out what's going on and whether we come closer to lowering the inflation rate. So that's what we want to watch, you see. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hilda.
So what did they, that's one of the, how many are there? There's 5
John.
on the board, or how many?
Oh, that I know.
John, we're on the air.
Hey, Fred.
Happy John Fisher Day.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much for I saw your recording. You posted it on your,
Yes,
what's your publication? Your
Website.
website. Yes, thank you
Right.
very much. I appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's where I saw it.